One, to inspire us to unravel our future potential. She is a chartered certified accountant and a fellow of the Association of Certified Accountants United Kingdom. She joined the AECI board in 2019. She chairs the Social, Ethics and Sustainability Committee and is a member of the Remuneration and Human Capital Committee, as well as Audit Committee. Until December 2021, Fikile was an independent non-executive director of Harmony Gold Mining Company, where she chaired the Audit and Risk Committee and was a member of the Social and Ethics, Remuneration and Nomination Committees. She serves as a non-executive in a non-executive capacity on the board of a Mercedes-Benz South Africa, where she chairs the Audit Committee and is a member of the Social and Ethics Committee. Fikile is the founding president of the South Africa chapter of the Global Forum of Women Entrepreneurs. She is included in the South Africa's Most Inspirational Women, a coffee table book, 2021. She is committed to embedding an inclusive culture, eradicate barriers to promoting and developing the next generation of female leaders. She is also a member of the Women in Mining South Africa. Distinguished guests, please join me in welcoming Fikile de Buck.
Thank you so much, Nina. It's very kind of you, and thank you for that lovely introduction. Ladies, it's such a privilege and an absolute honor to be here this morning. I thank you so much for the invitation. Colleen, thank you for getting hold of me together with Nicole and Nina. I am honored, truly so, because this, more than anything, is a passion of mine when it comes to women and to push them and see how far they can go. Because quite honestly, the sky is the limit. That is my view. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was born in Eswatini now, born in Swaziland. I am one of 5 children, one of four daughters. We had very strict parents, more my mother than my father because he traveled a whole lot. He wasn't at home as much as our mother was, so she was quite strict with us. But when it came to schooling, it was certainly our father who wielded the stick and was telling each of us, particularly the girls, that you have to make sure you pass. And he'd tell us, I'm not paying for this more than once. I'll pay for every level only once. If you fail, you'll figure out how you're going to pay for the repeat. And then I'll pick up from there when you pass. So he really was strict in that respect. And it was, as he put it, education is so important. And he said he wanted to give us a choice in life. He would always use mom as an example. He'd say, your mother is here with me out of choice. She could be anywhere in the world doing exactly what she does because she's qualified to do it. And he said, that's the choice I want for you. I want you to be able to go anywhere. He says, I'm educating you for anywhere, not here. And I think that was an important lesson for us to learn because it just opened the world for us. So he said he wanted us to make choices in life, go very far, and do whatever it is we wanted to do. We didn't like that because we didn't understand that. And as children, all you felt like you were just being pushed too far. But it helped a great deal. And he also made it clear that not one of the girls will leave home without at least the first degree, stressing the word first, because you're saying it's changing out there. You can't just rely on your one qualification. Make sure you get out and do a whole lot more, which we did. But when I finished high school and I was waiting for my exam results, prepping for university, still in Eswatini, I remember I was working standing behind the counter of our mother's fish and chip shop when in came the partner of Coopers and Lybrand. It was Coopers and Lybrand at the time. He was a family friend. And he came in and he said, the receptionist hasn't come in this morning. Can Fikile please come and man the desk? And the thought at the time was that it would be just for the day. So my mother turned to me and said, would you like to do it? And I said, absolutely. I just thought, this is going to be fun. Then I went into the Coopers and Lybrand office for the day, manning the desk, taught by his wife how to answer the calls and do everything, and even lent me their typewriter, a mini typewriter, to learn how to type at home so that at least I can start typing letters as well. And it ended up not being just the day, but I spent all my holidays at the office. When I left to go to university, where I studied for a BA and accounting degree, I was told they would like me to join them for every holiday until I finish my degree. That was absolutely fantastic because it meant I would go in and see what was happening. And my thought was, okay, I'll come back and man the desk. No, when I came back after the first year, I was told, no, go to the back and join the audit team and let's see what happens. So I became an audit clerk and joined the team at the back, beginning to see what the debits and credits were. And quite honestly, that was my introduction to the language of numbers. I had a boss that was an absolute slave driver. He worked me hard and I would get very upset. I was 18 and I thought, this can't be what it's all about. He worked me extremely hard. And whenever I would whimper and whine, he would say to me, I want you to be the best that you can be. And he said, I'm prepared to play a role in that. I can only do so much. You have to do the rest. And I would go home some weekends working. I was allowed to take the computer home and work from home. I was exhausted and crying half the time. And I remember our mother coming in to check on me, and she'd say, how's it going? And I said, oh, and she'd say, Fikile, there is no job that is too menial, and there is no job that is too hard. There's just a job that has to be done and done well. So that was this is a job that has to be done and done well. And we knew it because whether I was in shorts over the weekend and a cap mowing the lawn or in high heels during the week in the office, it was a job that needed to be done and done well. Pardon me. And then, of course, what happened was about 20 years later, when just to reference the work that needs to be done, I met a young lady who had joined Coopers and Lybrand when I left. And we met for tea, and she said to me, do you know that whenever we were being told how something needed to be done, we were referred to your files? And these are the files I was crying over, that I didn't want to do the work. It was too hard. It was all of this. And she says, we all learned how to do the job we were doing by being referred to your files. And every now and again, we'd have to go and pick up your file and see what it is that you had done and follow through. That sort of made me feel like it certainly was worth it. And just to say, you never really know the outcome of the work that you do, but it is important to just keep your head down and keep doing it, and keep doing it at your best at all times. Then I qualified from the university. I got a BA Economics and Accounting degree, and from there moved to Botswana. Please excuse me. Moved to Botswana, where I joined the Botswana Development Corporation as an accountant. All the years behind the desk at Coopers and Lybrand assisted me, and I managed to, under supervision, prepare the accounts of 5 farming entities, later taking over that role and becoming a senior accountant, but at some point went off to study in the UK because I wanted the professional accounting qualification. And I was in Birmingham for a few years studying account. I don't understand. Do you have a mint, please? Just a mint. Yeah, that'll help me. I was in the UK studying. Pardon me. I just seem to have a frog in my throat. studied at the UK. And in the first year of my studying for the ACCA, I actually won the Stuart Crystal Prize for Best Accounting Student. That came as an enormous surprise for me because I had been ill just before the exam started. I'd had minor surgery, thank you, and all I did was work, focus on the work and get it done. And that's what I often say, just do the work, everything else will follow. Don't focus on an outcome. Focus on passing, yes. Focus on doing a good job, yes. But focusing on a particular prize, which you may not necessarily get, which will disappoint you, is not necessarily the thing to do. For me, it is always focus on doing the work. And having been taught very early, it's a job that needs to be done and done well. That'll get you anywhere. And I must confess, I had no way of knowing I'd be included in the coffee table book, but there you go. And it came from working, just focusing on work that needs to be done and getting the work done. When I got the Stuart Crystal Prize, I was actually the first Black overseas student to get that prize. It was absolutely wonderful. In working in Botswana, I qualified by ACCA in 1994. And I think I was the second person to qualify with that qualification in the country, and got promoted to a certain level within the organization. And I had a female colleague who was being considered for promotion, working in a separate area in the organization. She was promoted. We were all very pleased about that. But I remember going to her office and saying, you actually don't have a right to fail. You have to do well because you're the first to be promoted to a very senior level in this organization. What happens to the rest of us depends on how you perform. And I said to her, I'm here to support you. I'll do whatever I can to help you. But you're not just going to do well, you're going to shine. And as a result, I just like to think that my support had something to do with it. Maybe not so. But what happened was other female members of staff got promoted and myself as well. So you really need, I understand the concept of pay it forward, but for me, it's you reap what you sow. You need to go out there and sow into other people's careers, and you will be surprised how you will get it back in spades. I, in my career, have had a number of people who have supported me. Some would just call me up and speak to me over the phone and just say, you're doing a great job. We're here for you. If you need us, we're here for you. Just hearing that was enough for me to go back to the office and do it again, if you understand what I mean, and just keep working. After a while, I was promoted to the Treasury Department, which I set up within the office, the BDC in Botswana. And we really were a development finance institution, not really by Treasury. It was really managing the funds that we had and not so much playing the market. Funds, different currencies used to fund various projects. So that was my role. Then I moved to South Africa and worked at the Council for Medical Schemes. I was one of the first lot of staff to set up the office. I think we were 8 when we started out. This was the regulator's office that had just been set up to manage the medical schemes. And there was an act, the Medical Schemes Act, that the schemes needed to comply with. Now, if you're in an environment where there had been no need for any of that beforehand, and then suddenly everybody needs to comply, you can imagine the friction that caused. We had a lot of legal cases, and we were driven by one clause in the Act, protecting the interests of the members. Everything we did revolved around the protection of the interests of the members. And glad to say that we won quite a lot of those cases. I don't remember which ones we may have lost, but we were aware that because it was a new office, we were actually fighting to protect the existence of the office. Spent a lot of time with the attorneys and the senior counsel who was assisting us. And those years in his office taught me that when you have an issue, you focus on the issue and not the person. Our mother used to say, play the ball and not the man. So it didn't matter where we were in terms of having to fight for the existence of the office, or protect the workings of the office. Some of those encounters were very, very hostile, but you got taught quite early that deal with the matter and not with the person. That's something that I have learned and have tried to follow through and keep it with me in everything that I have done, whether as an executive in an office environment or even on the board. Deal with the matter, not with the person. Truth is, if you spend your time dealing with the person, it reflects on you and not the other person. So deal with the matter and not with the person. And we, in the department that I was in, were responsible for regulating the financial reporting and making sure that the medical schemes functioned as they should in terms of the Act, their reserving requirements, and etc. After a few years, I got promoted to CFO and COO. It was a dual role, which meant I was not only responsible for the functions of the financial supervision unit, which was looking at the medical schemes and making sure that they functioned properly, and that their annual reporting, and we also changed it to quarterly to make sure that if there were any problems, we caught them early. We had some schemes we said were in the ICU unit, which we thought was actually quite funny because they needed our attention. But what happened was, and then of course the financial function as well. And what happened was, that's when the PFMA came into existence whilst we were there, and whilst I was there as CFO. Very big challenge in that not everybody understood what was required. We spent a lot of time with Treasury trying to understand precisely what it was that they needed us to do. And even then, from an interpretation perspective, it wasn't all coming through clearly. Fortunately, pooling all resources we could, we prepared our financials in terms of the PFMA, and we always had clean audits. Now, this we found in the health cluster. Sometimes we were the only entity with a clean audit, and sometimes there would just be two. But that was exciting for us, and it wasn't just the clean audits as much as it was the congratulatory messages, letters we would get from the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel. That was very exciting for us. And what we did find, even after I had left the Council for Medical Schemes, I got a note from the CFO who took over, I think it was 8 years later or so, to say, thank you so much for all the systems you put in place, because we're still having clean audits. And yet at the time, I was the ogre of the office because you can't do this, you can't do that in terms of the Act. But there you see it again, do the work. Just focus, do the work hard, work well, and it will follow you. And that is where you really begin to understand the concept of you are responsible for your own brand. What you do will follow you. Doesn't matter whether it is good or it is bad. You will not leave it behind. It comes back to you. Whilst I was at the Council for Medical Schemes, I had the privilege of being invited to join the Harmony Board, which was the first board that I joined here. I had been on previous boards, which were basically from an executive perspective, in the sense that sit on this board and look after our interests, sit on that board and look after our interests. But this was the first time I was invited to join an external board. Needless to say, the learning curve was very steep. What did I do to help myself? Other than being on the committees that I had been assigned to, I went and asked the chairman of the technical committee if he would allow me to sit in on his meetings because I really just wanted to learn. I needed to find out precisely what this whole thing was about, because if you think about it, debits and credits are debits and credits. But there's a story behind those debits and credits, and that's the story I was looking for. And sitting around the table at committee meetings was not giving me the full picture. So I asked him if he would be okay if I sat in his committee meetings, and he said yes, that would be fine. I also sat in on, I think, a couple of other meetings just to be on top of what this is about. You need to make yourself available to learn. I also had several trips underground to go and see for myself what was meant by a shaft at this depth. This is what is happening here. This is what is happening there. And fortunately for me, I had some colleagues on the board who had spent many years in mining. And fortunately for me, again, there was no question that was a stupid question. So I asked many questions. I think I was a pain in the neck for a while, but it helped me to get an understanding of what it was we were dealing with. And I did leave the Council for Medical Schemes, I think it was 2008, and eventually joined other boards, which I'm very, very grateful for. What is important here is the fact that going back to whatever you do follows you. Apply yourself. Make sure you're playing the ball and not the man, because it reflects on you. Watch your brand closely. Look after your brand. And you don't have to be conscious of looking after your brand if it is a job that needs to be done and done well. I'm very grateful for that lesson because it is something that we were taught quite early. And even as our mother would come and say, it's a job that needs to be done and done well, our father would come by once in a while and say, how is it going? Just to get the how is it going and are you still okay is also something I've had the absolute privilege of benefiting from colleagues on the board. I had a colleague on the board that I felt very safe with, in the sense that he would build me up every time, but would also, the good thing about the relationship that we had was that it wasn't always well done. It was, you did what? You should not have done that. It would assist me in and build me up as we went along. It was fantastic because that's precisely what you need. Get yourself somebody you trust, and the relationship was both ways. He would be in the throes of handling a matter and would call me up and say, Fikile, what do you think? This is what is before us, and just give me your perspective. I would do likewise. And I think that's absolutely imperative, especially in an environment where you're not 100% sure of all aspects, given that it is not an environment you're familiar with, but also it helps to build each other in terms of confidence and work that needs to be done and way forward. I think it's important. You can call that a mentor. And we still do that. That's the wonderful thing. Even post the board that we were both on, we still do that. I still get a call and he still gets a call, and it works well. Some of the lessons that I have learned, I've learned that no matter what, always do the right thing. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable it gets. It can be. Sometimes you're doing the right thing. Pardon me, it means you have to step on a few toes. But no matter what, do the right thing. I've also learned that hard work pays off. It may not be immediate, but the results of the hours and the time and the work you put in will always pay off, will always show themselves. It's just a matter of when, not if. It's just a matter of when. Interestingly, the hard work paying off and always doing the right thing, that's when you start getting calls and people say, we're watching you. And we're really excited about what you're doing. Some people I'd never met before would come up to me and say, really proud of what you're doing. And it stuns me because I haven't gone out there to say, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. But what it does say is it doesn't matter what you do, you are being watched. And that's what we've got to be careful about, which is where the brand management comes in. You cannot misbehave, whether it is an executive meeting or it is a board meeting. You can't misbehave in that environment and think it's not going to be known. And that actually means can't trust her with that because this is how she behaves. So it's an important thing. And your name, you only have one name. Look after it. The Fikile that was at Cooper's and Lybrand more than 20 years ago is the Fikile sitting before you now. You only have one name. Look after it. You can't make various decisions that you think are of no consequence. There's nothing like that. There's absolutely nothing like that. We see it all the time when people want to do something and then it says, no, 10 years ago, this is what happened. Look after your name. Look after your brand. It's who you are. Something else that I learned was good paperwork will always speak for you. When you've, especially in an executive position, make sure you have good paperwork. It'll always speak for you. When everybody doesn't remember, the piece of paper will remember. And exactly what transpired will come to the fore. I've had an instance where nobody remembered what had happened, and having had it drummed into me by the boss I thought was a slave driver, that your paperwork must always be up to scratch. I had the paperwork that proved and showed everybody exactly what had transpired. I must confess, it saved my bacon at the time because it was getting a bit difficult. Other thing you need to do is help others whilst you're on your journey. Help them because you're sowing a seed, and we all reap what we sow. It will come back to you. I've had the privilege of reaping because I assisted the lady who was, and I believe it's so, I assisted the lady who was promoted, worked hard to make sure that she performed very well. What I have also done is in my capacity on the boards, when anybody has gotten a senior position, I like to go, especially the young ladies, I like to go and talk to them and remind them that they have no right to fail. Remind them that they're being watched by young ladies who are saying to themselves, one day I'd like to be like that. One day I'd like to be like Nicole. One day I'd like to be like Nina. Why? Because they're watching you. You might not be aware of it, but you are being watched. So you need to help others on their journey. Critical for me, it doesn't matter where you get to, if you do not use your position to benefit others, I don't know why I'm in darkness. I don't know if you can still see me, but I'm sure you can hear me. If you must at all times use your position to benefit others. If you have not done that, it is my view that you have failed. It doesn't matter what you think, what qualification you have. You're a CEO, you're the president. It doesn't matter what position you attain. Getting the position is only the first start, is only the first leg of it all. Using that position for the benefit of others is where real success is. And that's what we need to do. I like one of the stories in the Bible that really fascinates me is the one about Queen Esther. She was an orphan girl. And thank you, Nina. She was an orphan girl. And she was raised by her uncle. And what happened was the king's wife died. We won't talk about how. The king's wife died. And she was then encouraged to be part of the process where the selection of the new queen was going to take place. She joined a pool of other young ladies who were being assisted to groom themselves and ready themselves for their first meeting with the king. Just to pause there and say a couple of things. It really doesn't matter how you start out. She was an orphan and was raised by her uncle. Everybody has an opportunity. You just need to find where it is. So she went through this process And whilst she was being groomed, the good thing about her being groomed is the fact that she was happy and very, very open to assistance and guidance. We can't get into positions and think we know it all. No, we don't. There's always room to learn. Be open for that. Be open to that. Learn and get guidance from other people, because that's precisely what is going to get you to the next level. That is something I have benefited enormously from. Always being open to learning. After a year of that process of guidance and learning, she was then, amongst the other ladies, presented to the king, and she was chosen to be queen. First impressions. On first impression, she was picked. This is where you have to realize that every day you walk into the office is your first impression, because you're only as good as your last encounter. You can have 10 years of great work, but if you mess it up right at the end, that's all everybody's going to remember. You've just erased your 10 years. So every day you walk into the office, that's your first impression. Every day you walk into the boardroom, that's your first impression. And you've got to build on that and not destroy it. Once destroyed, it's very, very difficult to pick up from there. She was chosen to be queen, and a few years later, got word of the fact that there was a plot to annihilate the Jews. And she was in a position where she could do something about it, which is where the story started for me. It's your position, where you are, what you can do about what is happening around you. Whether it is on the CSI front, whether it is your colleagues, wherever it is, each one of us has the responsibility to impact those around us. And if you have not done that, as I say, you have failed. Queen Esther stepped up to the plate, spoke to the king, and the Jews were saved. She used her position. Your position has a purpose. Your position is there for you to do what needs to be done in that environment in which you're functioning. We unfortunately operate in a place where getting the position, getting the big car, getting the big house is all about I've arrived. No, until you have used that position correctly, you have not arrived. Something is very wrong with you being there. Perhaps you have not understood the purpose of the position. I've spent many years praying every time I'm in a position, and I ask, why am I here? It could be somebody else if you think about it, but it's not somebody else, it's me. So my question becomes, why am I here? When I find that there's not a herd of wild horses that can remove me from where I am, nor force me to compromise my position wherever I am, because I've understood why I'm there. So if you understand that, get the debits and credits right, yes. Get the reports right, yes. But if you've got a colleague somewhere who needs some help and some of your time, you've got to do that. We've all got to grow together and rise together. The greatest level of working is working for the benefit of others. Whether that benefit is in your office or it is elsewhere. We learned that from our parents. They taught us that the fact that we had a roof over our heads, food on the table, clothes on our backs, shoes on our feet, didn't mean they were done. They went and put other children through school. When mom had her fish and chip shop, she made sure that after the lunch hour, all the street kids used to come to the shop. Each one of them would get some food because she understood that it was the benefit of others. Our grandparents, whenever there was a crop and there was a family not far from us or any family that he heard about that was hungry, we were not allowed to have our bellies full if they were hungry. The highest level of working is working for the benefit of others. What is fascinating is that the amount of joy that gives you when you've actually had an opportunity to positively impact somebody else, is immeasurable. You can't put a price to it. You can't do anything with it. And that is more fulfilling than a lot of other things that one can do. A couple of don'ts. Don't sabotage others. I think I said so earlier. It only reflects on you. Whether it is a colleague at an executive level or it's a colleague on the board, it only reflects on you. And that is what is going to hold you back. You will reap what you sow. Don't go out there and push yourself. I'm not saying don't be motivated. You absolutely need to be motivated. But oftentimes, recognition that you are not even seeking will find you. But when you keep pushing yourself and keep getting in other people's way, the phone will ring and they'll say, it's Fikile. They'll say, not her again. Tell her I'm not here. Let your work, let what you do speak louder than anything else. And as far as your career development is concerned, the do's, obviously, work hard. It pays. Look after your brand. You only have one name. It'll follow you everywhere. Look after your brand. Help others. It is the highest level of working. Be fiercely competitive. Fiercely competitive. Compete with yourself. Not with your colleague. Compete with yourself. Strive to do better than you did the last time. You might be competing with the colleagues whose standards are lower than yours. If you're competing with somebody who's happy with 40% and you get 45% and you're thinking, yay, I've done it. No. When your potential is 90, 95, 100%, you're selling yourself short if you're competing with your colleague. Compete with yourself. Push yourself to do better at all times. Imagine if you're running a race and you're competing with somebody who's a 100-meter dash is what they're good at. Meanwhile, inside of you is a Casta Semenya. You can go a whole lot further and a whole lot faster. And you're stopping at 100 meters or 110 meters because you think you've outshone the other one. No, it's what you are capable of that you need to keep working towards. So keep your standards high and keep working. Keep working on those. Find a mentor. A mentor is very important. I have had a former lecturer of mine be somebody who I would sit and talk to now and again, and she would just say, keep at it. Keep at it. Give pointers here, give direction there. That is absolutely important. Sometimes it is better for you to find a mentor outside of your organization, a mentor outside who is not sitting on the board with you. Sometimes that works in better. And find somebody whose greatest joy is your success. Not somebody who's going to be trying to compete with you, but somebody whose greatest joy is your success. And I've also had the privilege of having the support of my family, my parents, my siblings, all the people who've prayed for me and with me. You can't put a value to that. I'd like to stop there if I may. Thank you very much.
Well, Fikile, thank you so much for that. We have 3 questions in the chat. How did you manage to adapt to different worlds, be it the UK, Swaziland, Botswana, and SA? How did you manage to juggle those different worlds and adapt to that?
I think one of the things I've mentioned is the strong prayer life. That's helped enormously. And having the support of the family. And knowing that there was somebody out there who was wishing me well and wanting me to succeed. When I got to the UK, it was extremely difficult. The first 6 weeks of my arrival, I saw nothing but gray and rain and what have you. And I burst into tears, actually. I understood the whole, the weather has something to do with your mood. And because it was constantly gray, and depression can set in very easily. Fortunately, I had housemates who were very supportive, and I didn't live alone. And my tutor at the college in Birmingham would check in on me on a regular basis. Are you doing okay? Is there anything you need? Bearing in mind the fact that I was in an environment that I didn't know. So I had that support over there. In Botswana, fortunately, I had some friends there already, some friends I had made when I was at university. We had gotten to know each other, so Botswana was not completely strange. Health, fortunately, again, the language was not that much of a barrier because my mother was born South African, so had heard the language Sepedi and Setswana most of my life, so was able to adapt in that respect as well.
Great, thanks, Fikile. The second question goes like this. How have you managed to juggle the balls of life, be it relationships, family, and work demands? How have you prioritized, when everything is urgent?
I think that's precisely it. Everything is urgent. When it comes to the little ones, they're helpless without an adult. I was working with people who understood that. Family is important as much as work is important. So as long as the work gets done, whether it ends up being at midnight, pardon me, or at 2 in the morning and the reports get submitted then, as opposed to 5 p.m. Fortunately, I had the support of my supervisors. Had a bit of a challenge with one of my sons who was very, very sickly. And again, the ability to make up the time whenever I could is what helped me to juggle that.
Thank you, Fikile. One more question. How do you deal with setbacks in opposition and delays?
Opposition, I experienced that throughout my career. And what the opposition did for me, iron sharpens iron. What the opposition did for me is force me to work harder. It meant it didn't matter what I was doing, I had to make sure that I did it well, because I knew it would be an opportunity to break me down. It would be an opportunity to, you see, she's not quite as competent as she makes out. So I made sure I checked and I checked and I checked before I submitted anything. It helped me to be quite thorough. That's what opposition did for me. It helped me to, I will not deny the stress. It's very difficult to feel like you're being watched all the time. Somebody's just waiting for you to trip up. But like I say, it forced me to be thorough. That helped me. Delays, I believe there's a time for everything. If it's not time, I'm not going to rush it. Perhaps there's a bit that I still need to prepare. I don't have all the tools for the position. Then I'm happy to wait. We like to rush. I like the story of the butterfly, where somebody tried to help the butterfly to hatch, injured it instead of helping it, and it eventually died. So I believe there is a time for everything. And when the time comes, nothing will stop it. Setbacks, they come, but what they do is work on your character. Are you going to take the setback and decide, oh, woe is me, and do nothing about it? Or are you going to gird up your loins and work a little harder and make sure that it works next time? Which I've had to do a number of times. So that's what I've done.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions for Fikile?
Yes, we do. We've got two comments, though, Fikile, before I do that. It says, Kwesi says, that was amazing. Thank you.
Oh
And
my,
Prudence
thank you.
says, thank you, Fikile, for sharing your story with us. Very inspirational.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Tandi says, how have you kept your personal brand relevant over the years as your career has morphed? What deliberate actions have you made to build or rebuild your brand in the new spaces or environments?
Now, brand management and relevant is the key word here. You just have to keep learning. You've got to be prepared to keep learning. I mean, ESG landed on everybody's lap just the other day, and it has meant everybody has to keep learning. Keep learning, attend conferences, read as much as you can, engage with other people who are in that space. It helps. It also helps to be a pain in the neck sometimes and keep asking questions, which I have done. I have a former colleague on one of the boards who I actually said thank you when he left. I said, thank you so much for always answering my questions when I asked. And he said, you're the one person who made me feel like I belonged here, because you kept making me feel like there was relevance. So that's what I do. I try to keep up with what's going on around me, because it is changing all the time.
Eunice says, hi, Fikile. As you climb the ladder, there are critics and even people wanting to trip you down. How did you deal with vulnerability?
You know, there's the concept of clap back. I see it all the time. Oh, clap back, clap back. You just work harder. When people try to trip you up, you just work harder. There's nothing you can do. It's happened to me, and it's not the nicest of things. But the other thing, you know, is so-and-so is not somebody I can rely on. That's information that is being brought to the surface for you. It isn't always negative. Somebody shows you who they really are. Then you know, okay, I can't rely on so-and-so. This is who I can rely on, and that's where you go. And my advice with people trying to trip you up, as I said earlier, the real reflection is on them. It is not on you. Key for you is how you respond. It's happened in meetings to me. People try to trip me up, and I try very hard to deal with the matter that is being raised as opposed to the person who is raising it and how that person is raising it. Play the ball and not the man. Going right back to that lesson. And the advocate, the senior counsel who said to me, just focus on the issue. Don't let them rattle you. Focus on the issue. So that's how I try to deal with it. Perhaps I'm not always successful. I walk out feeling like I've been through a shredder, but as long as I haven't played the man, I walk out feeling like, from my perspective, which is an important perspective, I still have the upper hand.
Yeah. That's amazing. Lorata asks, hi, Fikile, workplace bullying has become topical. Have you experienced it from a senior manager? And if you have, how have you navigated it? If you haven't experienced it, what is your view on it and best advice to deal with it, taking into account fears of victimization?
It's a difficult one. I found that a lot of bullies are operating from a position of insecurity. Something is wrong somewhere. If we're balanced and everything is all right, you have no need to make anybody else feel lesser than. You know, you're less than I am. I can do better than you. Something must be wrong. There's a spoke in the wheel that isn't there. How do I deal with it? I focus on myself. There's something wrong with the bully. I focus on myself. Is there any aspect of what the bully has raised that may be relevant? No. Check. Therefore, the problem is not mine. How do I answer the bully back? I excel. Especially when I'm worried about victimization. It's an organization that I'm not too comfortable with all the other members. The greatest response is to excel. And then when people begin to see you, you shine. You cannot ignore a light that is shining. You shine. You work hard. I've been bullied. I have gone home, I have cried, I've gone back and worked harder. That's been the greatest response. And I say that given the tail end of the question, what if you're afraid of what will come back? What will come back to you? What has happened in those circumstances is that the bully has gotten exposed. When those things keep coming and they keep getting proven wrong, the bully gets exposed and people begin to deal with the bully. That has been my experience.
That's amazing. Loretta also goes on to saying, thank you, Fikile, for the critical points. Some we know, but we needed to hear them positioned as well as you have, because knowing doesn't translate to application until you hear from someone who's applied it and it's worked. Thank you. We need more of you.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. My greatest joy is making sure that young ladies can become, if I can use the word become, that we each have an incredible potential. We don't know until we try what it is we're capable of. Just think about it. You get a seed, 9 months, there's a baby. Imagine what you've produced. Each one of us needs to grasp the fact that there is so much that we're capable of. And I get excited when I'm able to encourage somebody. It's my joy. I love it when the young ladies in organizations I have left come back to say, thank you so much for having encouraged me. This is what I've done with what you did. So I'm thrilled, absolutely.
That's amazing. Are there any other questions for Fikile?
I do have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nina.
Yes, my question is to Fikile, how have you managed to accept the opportunities of all these boards that you've served? And I'm sure there has been so many which you have declined to. How have you selected that? And most probably it was aligned to your values or whatsoever. If you can just take us through that. Thank you.
It's a good question, Nina. We are now at a time where, apart from personal interest, I mean, there's some boards you look at and you think, oh, this would be interesting. It would really be nice to get on this board, maybe learn something different. Is there anything in my skill set that I can apply here? Because some of them have come, as a bolt from the blue, and it has been intriguing, really. But we're also at a place where you've got to be concerned about your brand. You have offers and invitations to sit on various boards. You've got to ask yourself about the entity concerned, whether you really would like to be associated with that entity, because it'll have a direct impact on you. The other thing I've had to bear in mind is areas of conflict. I cannot sit on a board where there's any suggestion that there may be a conflict with a board I am sitting on already, or something else that I am doing elsewhere. I've been told a few times there is no conflict. Our assessment of it is that there is no conflict, but I've learned that there is actual conflict, there is perceived conflict, and there is felt conflict. If you feel conflicted, even if anybody and everybody else says there is no conflict, the mere fact that you feel conflicted, it will have a direct impact on the work that you can do. So it is in your best interest and that of the organization, the entity concerned, to step aside. So those are some of the things that I take into account when I select a board, or privileged enough to have them select me.
Thanks, Fikile.
Thank you.
Fikile Pravani says exactly what I needed to hear this week. Thank you for your wisdom and saying it out loud for us to hear it and absorb it. And Ntombaleng says, thank you, Fikile. I needed to hear the words of wisdom this week. Are there any other questions for Fikile?
I'll go for the last one. I promise it's the last one.
Okay, that's fine.
Fikile, obviously you have taken an interest, I mean, in youth and women development. And also knowing that you are a mom to boys. So how do you, sort of navigate through, yes, I'm in support of, let's say, this gender, youth, etc. And then at the same time, at home, I've got boys that I'm actually raising or whatever the case. How have you, grapple around that? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. And it's actually quite funny because I've never seen the boys as being separate from the gender issue. It's not, how can you be so focused on the girls when you've got boys? The boys understand that we're equal. There's no chore in the house that's strictly for the girl. Goodness, that would just be me then. So imagine me having to do everything. But what happens is that we're in the garden together, whether there's lawn to be mowed or weeding to be done or vegetables to be planted. So they see mom in the garden. So when we're in the house and there's cleaning to be done, we do that together. There's no separation of roles. They also understand in the manner in which I have raised them that everybody is equal. That equality comes from a biblical perspective. Man and female, male and female, he created them. And he didn't say we are not equal. So there's also without losing the protective over mom aspect, which is a very important thing from a gentleman's perspective. Their grandfather was an absolute gentleman. So they need to learn that. And I think, Nina, the word navigate is key here because they need to see that. They see the gender roles that are blurred in the house because everybody does everything. We're cleaning, we're cooking, we're in the garden. But I also make them understand that outside is not necessarily the same as inside. And we all need to play our part to make outside look more like inside, if that makes sense. We need to take this environment that works here and take it outside and make sure that it works there as well. So as they develop, it is my hope and my prayer that they will see the need to uplift. They need to see the inequality where it exists and uplift and make sure that change is in place. It would be wonderful if they're actually the ones who effect that. It would be a very proud moment for mom, given the way that we've tried to raise them in the house. Nina, I hope that helps.
It does. Thanks so much.
Fikile, there's another question. As a female operating at such senior levels in male-dominated industries, how have you managed realistically work-life balance? Is this a flurry HR term, or is it doable without a detrimental sacrifice, like family time or personal pet loves?
The truth is, there's been quite a bit of sacrificing that one has needed to do. For instance, when I went to study in the UK, I understood. I remember having a conversation with a lady, a mom who had gone to pick up her son at school when I had gone to pick up my oldest son at school. And she said to me, I don't understand how you can leave your child and go overseas and study. Oh, I could never do that. And I said, no, I can understand why you wouldn't have to do that. Because as an expatriate, everything is paid for you. I have to pay for it. So I have to work for it to be able to pay for it. It's been a hard journey, but it's been a journey that has been necessary. And I remember saying, I don't want my children to feel deprived. We never felt deprived as kids. Our parents were civil servants who worked very hard to make sure that we got what we needed and some. But to be able to ensure that the children didn't feel deprived, you had to work hard to make sure that enough was brought in to be able to give them that little bit extra. And I have worked hard with the rest of the family to try and bring that about. But the sacrifices have been real. Can't lie about that one. When I went to the UK, my older one was 2 years old, and I left him at home. But I did that because I knew when I came back, I would be able to give him more than he was getting beforehand. And it was always about what can I do for the children? Because if they are not raised right, we don't have a hope. We don't have a hope. You look outside, we say all the things that we say about all sorts of things, but as parents, we try to do the best that we can to give them that opportunity. My thought as well is I want to be able to afford to send them to the schools they need to go to, because I'm raising them for the world, not for the little corner I'm in. As our father said, I'm raising you for the world. You're going to school to be able to go out into the world. So understanding that I needed to sacrifice a few things up front to be able to allow them to become and do the things that they want to do, and in some instance absolutely need to do, is a choice I've had to make. Some of those choices have been difficult, but I look back and I wouldn't undo what I did. I like to think it's been beneficial all around.
That's amazing. And I totally agree with Loretta. She says, thank you for the honesty. And I think so too often we want to actually give off this picture that everything's rosy, everything's possible, everything, and it doesn't. It takes real hard work. So
even if it is rosy, there are lots of thorns in there. So we
exactly,
need to remember it.
Exactly. Are there any other questions for Fikile? No, there's nothing. Fikile, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending time with us this morning and giving of your wisdom, and in your hectic diary, you've taken out your time to be with us. So we really appreciate the time that you've taken.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be able to do this. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you. And to everybody on the call, as you well know, that this is Health and Wellness Month. So we've got an amazing lady, Kerry Lee, that's just going to tell us a little bit about what they're doing in terms of health and wellness. So Kerry Lee, are you there? Kerry Lee, you there?
Yes, there we go. Here I am. Sorry, I was just unmuting myself.
Yeah. Super.
Sure. Before anything, I just want to acknowledge Fikile. I was absolutely captivated the entire time of just your sharing. It really, I know I'm with everyone on the chat where they just voiced how they needed to hear this, and I just feel privileged. I was taking notes, and I'm going to spend some time, I guess, also just re-looking at the Esther story. It's certainly one that resonated with me when I read it, and it's something I want to go back to and just truly take in. So thank you, Fikile. And Colleen, thank you so much for putting Mental Health Awareness Month on the map. It's something that we are extremely passionate about at Panda, which is the company that I work for. And just within my own capacity, mental health is dear to my heart. It's something that I've walked a personal journey with, and have taken steps towards really integrating my professional career with as well. So I guess my name is Kerry Lee, and I'm actually a trained occupational therapist, but I have progressively moved over from clinical practice in mental health and neurology into corporate wellness and corporate mental health. And so, I find myself at Panda. And yeah, I think really the purpose of joining in today is to share with you around Mental Health Awareness Month and what that is all about, and particularly how I'm living that out at Panda. And so, yeah, the WHO, so the World Health Organization, has noted the theme for Mental Health Awareness Month to basically be making mental health a global priority. And you know, I consider the women on this call today. I'm not sure. I haven't yet seen any men, so I'm not sure if it's a coincidence or what, Colleen. But yeah, you know, I do kind of make the assumption that there is an awareness around the prevalence of mental health, and so something that is really ringing true for me is, how do we make mental health a priority? Is really just figuring out education. It's figuring out accessibility. It's figuring out how to overcome the stigma around it. And in our individual capacities, it's figuring out how do we share our voice in this space to be able to create awareness around mental health and really just start normalizing the conversation that needs to be shared around mental health. So yeah, I basically, I see Kwesi has popped in the chat to find out more. So yeah, do feel free to have a look. But yeah, basically, in terms of making mental health a priority, it really is about almost drawing the parallels with physical health. So what we know about physical health is that we want it to be something, well, we know it to be something that's intuitive. You know, from very young age, we kind of are exposed to what it means to take your physical health seriously, and I guess kind of the continuum of that is pain. So we kind of see pain as the response to us being able to react appropriately, you know. So if we're in an extreme amount of pain that's unmanageable for us at home, we will take steps towards going to see a doctor, you know. And over time, we've really learned that we want to be proactive about our physical health. And what does that look like? It looks like going to see a doctor. It looks like screening checks, so annual screening checks that take place for us, and then really looking at kind of the holistic physical health system. So we want to be looking at our cardiovascular systems, our musculoskeletal systems, you know, I guess even if we think of screening checks for our eyes to have a look and that kind of thing. So sorry, one second, I just want to check something on my computer here. There we go. Yeah, great. Yeah, so going back to what I was saying around physical health and then this intuitive system and pain being the response, and us kind of as a society, you know, we've really, if we think of like comorbid diseases and how we're wanting to combat that in terms of people taking proactive early intervention steps to prevent kind of downstream diseases from happening. And so when we look at mental health, then we kind of consider, if we've all got physical health, then surely we all have mental health, you know. And that might be an obvious statement, but the global narrative around mental health is something that is still growing in terms of people actually conceptualizing that it's okay to talk about mental health in the same way that we talk about physical health. And what we know is that COVID has definitely accelerated the narrative around mental health in terms of people being forced to be faced with very disruptive life experiences. Just, you know, I think of the change of the work from office to work from home. But then on top of that, it was that kind of forced experience of losing loved ones, of seeing other people lose loved ones, of, you know, routines and habits and things that regulated us, distractions that kind of took us away from what was going on, you know, kind of at a deeper level. All of those got removed, and people were really kind of disarmed and having to face some very hard realities, you know, whether it was within the context of their sort of nuclear environments, their social, familial environments, or actually whether it was just very, very suppressed emotions that actually surfaced. And, you know, what we're seeing in kind of, if I can almost call it the aftermath of COVID-19, is we actually have two extremes of people on the one hand suppressing that they are thriving after COVID-19 because they feel guilty, for people on the other end of the extreme going, I really can't cope and I'm still struggling, you know, after COVID-19. And there's this kind of extreme suppression of emotion and thoughts and experiences that are taking place. And so, you know, what we're really seeing is how do we kind of bring these extremes about, and how do we get safe spaces where people can come and talk about their lived experiences in a way that is constructive, in a way that's healthy. And so, you know, with that in mind, it's very, very difficult to consider. Physically, we've got the language, you know, we've got the research, it's tangible, it's objective, it's measurable. There's all these things that we can kind of pull on to be able to articulate what's going on for us. But if we think of mental health, it's extremely difficult if you aren't someone who has been exposed to, you know, almost conversations. And it doesn't mean to say that you're a psychologist or a counselor or anything like that. You know, I just think of someone like Fikile, who has really taken time to reflect on her life journey and taken time to distill the learnings, you know, and taken time to communicate and articulate what she's been through. And then, you know, furthermore, how she can empower others by doing that. You know, that is not something that everyone has been able to cultivate. And so what we at Panda, and I guess I keep referring to we as Panda because it's kind of so sort of integrated into my own thinking. And what I truly believe is that we've got to be starting somewhere, you know. So if we think globally, if people have not kind of started their mental health journey, how can they be encouraged to do so? And to me, two things ring true. It's one, to actually start taking assessments, you know, almost assessments that are available online, assessments that are in clinical practice around depression, anxiety, you know, addiction, whatever is sort of ringing true, so people can start to understand what is the symptomology, how does this present, how does it affect function, what is the relationship between what I'm experiencing and how it actually impacts my functional level in what I'm doing. And so assessments then provide us with this almost feedback mechanism of going, oh, you know, that's a symptom of that, and that's affecting me in that way, and start to join the dots. And when people start to do that, they start to develop a language around understanding where they are on the continuum of mental health. So, you know, a bad day turns into a bad week, turns into a bad month, turns into a bad year. And over time, we've got very entrenched, ingrained thinking patterns. We've got entrenched emotional response patterns. And you know, that's true for everybody. And I think that's also something that I'm learning. You know, it's around figuring out it's going to happen anyway. You know, you're going to have emotional patterns and thinking patterns that develop anyway. So if they're going to develop anyway, why not take proactive steps towards it? Why not unpack what's going on there and get a bit of agency and accountability going in what's going to be happening already? And so with that in mind, you know, going back to what I was saying about the two things, the one is these assessments, and the second is to create safe spaces. And I think, you know, as kind of everyone on this call, I really want to charge you to look at your life and go, where can I be creating these safe spaces for people to explore their mental health, you know? And I'm going to be honest with you and say that it is messy. And it's messy because there's almost this overreaction that people have, or this underreaction that they have. So they either kind of, start figuring it out and going, okay, that's anxiety, that's depression, that's how it presents. Oh, I've got a label. Oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm depressed. I need medication. So there's that kind of extreme, and then people using it as almost this knee-jerk response of an excuse and a scapegoat. And then there's this other extreme of people sort of denying and going, yes, okay, that's there, but I can't have that, and I don't want to have that, and that's not accepted within my social norms and within what I know to be acceptable within my culture. And so we really need to be empowering ourselves and going, okay, how do I, if we're going to go into these safe spaces and we're going to go into these voices and giving people voice, how do we contain them? How do we guide them to be something that is, how do I say, a reasonable or a appropriate? And I use these words carefully, because the trouble that we find in mental health is that everything is relative. It's a subjective experience, and that's why we need leaders, and we need people who are able to be there for people in a way that is able to contain them, so that we can really understand what next steps are appropriate to be taken, considering all these variables that I'm talking about. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's both considering what is happening on a global level, and then also what's happening on a individual level, and then how can we be proactive about that? Because for me, what we know is that early intervention is an extremely powerful means to be able to prevent the complexity and severity that becomes prevalent in a mental health kind of progression. And what happens then is that we've got a need for one-on-one therapy, because one-on-one therapy needs to be able to deal with very complex emotional responses and complex thinking patterns. But if we deal early on with early intervention, we can take very generalized psychosocial education approaches. We can take very generalized support groups and community groups, and we can almost have this idea of one expert to be rolling this out to many individuals, and that to me is kind of what's captivated me about Panda, where I work, in this idea of in the app, there's this forest where you've got an expert who is able to communicate with a number of users, Panda users, who are dialing in to listen to this expert. And moreover, within Panda, there's this anonymized identity. So you download the app and you create an anonymous profile, and you basically then are able to overcome this hurdle of going, I don't want to be known for seeking mental health care, because the narrative is that if you're looking for mental health care, you're a crazy person, or you are a risk to business. You're not productive. You are not accepted within your culture because it might be taboo. So there's a lot of stigma around it. And if we can anonymize people and get them access to this expert knowledge that I'm telling you about, we are preventing this downstream complication of needing one-on-one care. And so, with that in mind, at Panda, we basically have created sessions that happen from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. where people are able to understand what is a toxic relationship, what is, displaying depressive symptomology, but not actually having depression. What does it mean to be able to start your mental health journey? And so, that's the one thing I wanted to check in on. The other thing I want to check in on is actually this continuum of care. And so as I've progressed in my career, I've started to learn the difference between a counselor, a coach, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, an occupational therapist, a mental health nurse, a mentor, a mental health advocate, a social worker. I mean, really, it's just there are so many professions who are dedicating their lives to mental health care. But typically, you know, the man on the street only knows about psychology. And we think of psychology being 1,200 Rand a pop. You know, that's inaccessible for, you know, 90% of South Africans. Even if you're on a rich mental health, a rich medical aid plan, it's very unlikely, you know, that you are going to be able to afford regular psychology. So, you know, with that in mind, something that drew me to Panda is what they're trying to do is be able to map out the right care at the right time. And so it's really this triaging that takes place, whether you're dealing with clinical issues. So clinical means there's a diagnosis, there's complexity, there's severity that needs that one-on-one care, or you're dealing with non-clinical issues where there's maybe, you know, a short season or short time period where there's an issue going on or there's challenges going on, but it's, you know, kind of reflective of the circumstances that are happening. So you've lost a job and you're battling to deal with that. You have gone through a breakup and you're battling to deal with that. You started a new job and the adjustment's hard, you know, or whatever it is. And you don't necessarily need this complex psychoanalysis or medication or whatever it is that goes on. You actually just need a safe space to connect with the community who are going through similar issues to you, or to connect with an expert, you know, a mental health professional who's just able to guide you on some important tips and principles to apply to your situation. And so, yeah, you know, I kind of, I want to land there with really just recognizing that we are all people with mental health, whether, you know, no matter who we are, every individual. And if we can kind of take steps towards understanding our own mental health journey and putting language to that, we're then able to start empowering others to do the same. And by doing so, we're normalizing these conversations around mental health and really contributing to what it means to be holistic, interconnected beings, you know, where what happens in our physical impacts our mental, what happens in our mental impacts our physical. And if we look at different aspects of our lives where we've got spiritual, emotional, physical, intellectual, social, you know, and what is this interconnectedness in terms of what happens in one aspect has a knock-on effect in what happens in others. And so, yeah, I just want to leave everybody with that thought. Encourage everybody to check out Panda and see what the work that we're doing. And yeah, just open up for any questions. If anybody's got any comments, any questions, I'd love to engage in the conversation. And yeah, I hope that it's been helpful and meaningful for everybody who's had a listen.
Are there any questions for Kerry Lee? Nothing. They've all gone quiet, Kerry Lee.
That's okay. I know it's been a long meeting, so anyway, that's absolutely fine.
Anyway, so the recording of today's session will be on the Business Engage YouTube channel. If there's anybody within your organizations that want to know more about Panda, Kerry, Kwesi, sorry, did put the link into the chat. It's get.joinpanda.com. And you're more than welcome to go and check it out and get hold of Kerry. And if you need Kerry's details, just get hold of me and I'll gladly connect you with Kerry.
Absolutely. I'm going to pop my email and my my cell phone number in the chat.
Fantastic. Super. Kerry Lee, Kwesi, thank you so much for coming to spend this morning with us. To ACI, Nicole, Nina, Fikile, thank you guys so much for setting up today. It was really amazing to listen to Fikile's story, and just the honesty and the wisdom and the journey was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much for setting that up. And to everybody on the call, hope you have the most amazing day, and we'll see you next time. Have a great one, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.